In the heart of Europe, where rivers wind through misty plains and the echoes of battle never quite fade, the name of one man still lingers, Suleiman the Magnificent. For nearly half a century, he ruled an empire that stretched from the deserts of Arabia to the gates of Vienna. He was a conqueror, a poet, a builder, and a lawgiver. His armies reshaped the map of the world. His vision built mosques that still pierce the skyline of Istanbul. And his will carried the Ottoman Empire to the height of its power. Yet the story of Suleiman is not only one of conquest and glory. It is also a story of faith, aging, and the quiet dignity of a ruler facing his own mortality. It is the story of how, far from home and surrounded by war, the greatest of Ottoman sultans met his end, and left his heart buried in foreign soil. When Suleiman ascended the throne in 1520, he was just 26 years old. The empire he inherited was vast but fragile, stretching across lands conquered by his father Suleiman. From the very beginning, Suleiman showed a rare blend of vision and ruthlessness. He understood that empires are not only won on the battlefield, but also shaped by justice, order, and faith. In his first years, he struck boldly, capturing Belgrade in 1521, taking Rhodes from the Knights of St. John in 1522, and turning his eyes toward the powerful kingdom of Hungary. The Hungarian crown, backed by the Pope and the Habsburgs, had long resisted Ottoman influence in Central Europe. To Suleiman, Hungary was both a threat and an opportunity, a stepping stone to Vienna, and beyond. In the summer of 1526, he marched north with an army of over 100,000 men. Opposing him stood King Louis II of Hungary, barely 20 years old, leading perhaps 25,000. They met on the plains of Mohacs, a vast, open field near the Danube River. The battle lasted barely 2 hours. When it ended, the Hungarian army lay in ruin, its king dead in the marshes. The field of Mohacs became a graveyard for a nation. For Suleiman, the victory was total. The road to Central Europe was open, and the Ottoman banner flew high over the ruins of Christian kingdoms. In the eyes of Europe, he was no longer just a sultan, he was a shadow stretching westward, the embodiment of a rising eastern power that seemed unstoppable. But for all his triumphs, Suleiman was not merely a man of war. He was also a scholar, a poet who wrote under the pen name Mahibi. In his verses, he spoke of love, justice, and divine order. He built laws that united peoples of many faiths and languages under a single system of governance. In his lifetime, Istanbul became the jewel of the world, a city of domes, markets, and learning. The Europeans called him Suleiman the Magnificent. His people called him Kanuni, the lawgiver. Under his rule, the Ottoman Empire reached the height of its glory, touching 3 continents and defining an era. Relentless and patient, was beginning to claim its toll. By the 1560s, Suleiman was no longer the young conqueror of Mohacs. He was 70 years old, his body weakened by gout and illness, his bones aching from decades in the saddle. Yet his mind remained sharp, his faith unbroken, and his pride unyielding. When word reached Istanbul that a small Hungarian fortress, Zigitvar, had defied Ottoman rule and was supported by Habsburg forces, Suleiman's reaction was immediate. He would lead one last campaign himself. His advisors begged him to stay, to let younger generals command in his stead. But the Sultan refused. For nearly 50 years he had led his armies in person, and he would not end his reign hiding behind the palace walls. In the spring of 1566, the old emperor set out from Istanbul. It was to be his 13th campaign, his final march. The journey north was slow and heavy. Tens of thousands of soldiers, wagons, and cannons moved across the Balkans. Behind them, the songs of the Mater bands echoed through the valleys, a music of power and destiny. But within the Sultan's grand pavilion, the reality was more fragile. Suleiman's health was failing. He often had to be carried on a litter, unable to ride for long. He spent hours in prayer, writing verses that revealed a man who felt the closeness of death. In one of his last poems he wrote, "The world is but a dream, and all men are shadows that fade with dawn." By late summer, the Ottoman army reached the fortress of Zijitvar, a small but well-defended stronghold in southern Hungary. Its commander, Nikola Zrinski, was a Croatian nobleman of great courage. He knew he could not win, but he intended to die fighting. The siege began in August 1566. Cannons roared day and night. The ground shook with fire. Inside the fortress, the defenders resisted with desperate valor. Each day, more Ottoman soldiers fell. And in his tent, the Sultan grew weaker. Yet the army still looked to him. When reports reached him of setbacks, Suleiman ordered the drums to play louder, the banners to rise higher. He refused to let anyone see him suffer. Even as fever overtook him, he continued to issue commands. His voice was faint, but his authority absolute. Then, in the early hours of September 6, 1566, as thunder rolled over the battlefield, Suleiman the Magnificent died. He was 72 years old. Outside his tent, the final assault on Zijitvar was being prepared. Inside, the most powerful man in the world lay silent and still. His death was a secret too dangerous to reveal. If the soldiers learned their Sultan had died before victory, panic could break the army apart. Grand Vizier Suleiman Pasha gathered the Sultan's closest servants and ordered absolute silence. The tent was sealed. Only a few men were allowed to enter. Outside, the world continued as if nothing had changed. For days, Suleiman carried out orders from the Sultan, signing documents with the royal seal, issuing commands written by the dead man's hand. The illusion had to be perfect. To the army, their ruler was still alive, watching from within the golden pavilion. And so, on September 7th, the final attack began. Ottoman troops stormed the fortress. Flames consumed Zijitvar. Zrinski, the Croatian commander, led a last, suicidal charge and was cut down among his men. When the smoke cleared, the Ottoman flag flew over the ruins. Only then, when victory was secured, did the truth emerge. The Sultan, the conqueror of Mohacs, the lawgiver of the empire, was gone. But his death had not been in vain. His final campaign had ended in triumph. The empire remained unbroken. With the victory complete, Suleiman Pasha faced a grim duty. The body of the Sultan had to be returned to Istanbul for burial. But the long journey through the summer heat would cause decay. To preserve the remains, the internal organs, the heart, liver, and entrails, were removed and buried near the camp, beneath the trees outside Zijitvar. There, in foreign soil, the heart of an emperor was laid to rest. A small tomb was built over the spot, guarded by soldiers. It was said that the air itself grew still around it, as if the land knew whose spirit now slept beneath its surface. Years later, a shrine was erected, a humble octagonal structure marking the resting place of the Sultan's organs. Pilgrims came to pray, believing the site carried a sacred power. Even the local Hungarians, once his enemies, came to respect it. They called the hill Sultan's Mound. Meanwhile, Suleiman's body, sealed in a silver coffin, was carried back to Istanbul. There, in the heart of the city he had built, beneath the great dome of the Suleimani Mosque, it was laid to rest. His tomb remains one of the grandest in the Islamic world, a resting place fit for a ruler who shaped an age. Centuries passed. The Ottoman Empire rose and fell. Wars came and went. Borders changed, but the story of the buried heart remained. For generations, the exact site of the tomb near Zijatvar was lost to time. Only in recent decades did archaeologists rediscover it, hidden beneath farmland and forest. Today, it stands once more as a memorial, a symbol of shared history between Turks and Hungarians. Suleiman's heart, buried in foreign soil, became a metaphor for the empire itself, vast, powerful, yet divided between worlds. He ruled as both conqueror and builder, warrior and poet. His reign marked the height of Ottoman civilization, when art, law, and faith intertwined under one vision. And yet in his death, there is something deeply human. For all his wealth and might, he met his end like any man, quietly, far from home, with only the wind and the prayers of his soldiers to mark his passing. To his people, he was Kanuni, the lawgiver, the man who brought order to chaos. To Europe, he was the Magnificent, a ruler of fearsome majesty. But to history, he became something larger still, a bridge between worlds, between East and West, Islam and Christendom, past and present. The heart buried at Zijatvar is more than a relic. It is a symbol of the human side of empire, of ambition and faith, of power and mortality. It reminds us that even the greatest of rulers cannot escape the laws of life and death. And yet, through memory and legacy, they continue to live on. Today, the site of Zijatvar is peaceful. The sound of cannons and war cries has long faded. Where once the smoke of battle filled the sky, birds now circle above green hills. A memorial stands at the place where the Sultan's organs were buried, built in cooperation between Turkey and Hungary. Visitors come not as conquerors or subjects, but as witnesses to history. The soil of Zijatvar holds more than the remains of a king. It holds the meeting of two civilizations, one that came from the east, and one that rose from the west. Their clash shaped centuries of history, yet their shared respect today speaks of reconciliation. In Istanbul, the Suleimani Mosque still dominates the skyline. Its dome catches the morning light, its call to prayer echoes across the Bosphorus. Beneath it rests the man who once ruled half the known world. His body in the city of his glory, his heart in the land of his last victory. For some, this is a tale of conquest. For others, it is a meditation on legacy, the idea that greatness lies not in the reach of one's empire, but in the endurance of one's name. Suleiman's story endures because it is both human and eternal. It speaks of ambition and loss, triumph and humility. It tells us that even emperors must one day kneel before the same fate as all men. In the end, the empire faded, as all empires do. But Suleiman's shadow never vanished. His laws shaped nations. His mosque still touched the sky. His poetry still whispers of love and destiny. And somewhere beneath the soil of Zijatvar, the earth still remembers the steady rhythm of a heart that once beat for a world united under one faith and one vision. He was the ruler who united continents, the conqueror who wrote poems, the man who carried both the sword and the pen. He lived as a lion, ruled as a lawgiver, and died as a pilgrim of fate. Time took his empire, but not his legend. For as long as his name is spoken, in Istanbul, in Budapest, in the winds of the Danube and the call to prayer from the Golden Horn, the heart of Suleiman still beats. Not in flesh, but in memory. Not in empire, but in eternity.